Can I turn mine off?
No. It's on you, Mark. It's all to you.
All right, yeah. So my name is Mark Westgard. I am the founder of WS Form, and I also have an agency. I've had an agency for about 26 years. So I've been building websites from Netscape Navigator 1 onwards. So I've been doing it a fair amount of time. And really, my experience of WordPress 5.9 has been more from a plugin developer. So I just wanted to show you some of the tools that we use. I'm going to put some links in. Who here is using WordPress 5.9? Has anybody taken the plunge and upgraded yet? So we've got a few people playing around with it. Yes. Yeah, I mean, so Michelle and I went to State of the Word together, so we were given a bit of a preview of it there. And obviously the biggest change, so 5.9, you know, it's named after Josephine Baker, the jazz singer, so 5.9 Josephine. The biggest change in 5.9 is the introduction of full site editing. So I don't know if anybody here has had to play around with the full site editing and how that works, but essentially now what they're leaning towards and where it's going is to give you the ability to edit a website from top to bottom, so full site editing. So whereas before you'd have a theme with a fixed header, maybe a fixed footer, and you would edit the page itself, you've now got full site editing, so everything from the header all the way down to the footer. It ships with the new 2022 theme, which is a full site editing theme. And one of the things you'll probably you may have noticed with the new version of WordPress 5.0 in 2022 is that the customize menu under appearance has now disappeared. It will appear if you are using any plugins or any themes that need customized features. So if a theme or a plugin is using the customized feature to enable you to choose a font or a color or whatever, then it will appear. But by default now, WordPress is disabling customize. And the reason for that is that they're starting to move into moving the styles into the block editor as opposed to using the customized feature to do that. So it's going to give you a lot more control over block level styling, but also theme styling as well. Now the full site editing is still in beta, and I think that's important to remember with WordPress 5.9 is that if you're using an existing theme or you're using Divi or Elementor or Beaver Builder, those are all still going to work. And the reason that we have those site editors out there is that, you know, it's been in the past a little frustrating using Gutenberg as they've been developing it. So these full site editing, these site builders are still out there, still all work, and I can't see any reason for them to stop working when full site editing goes, full to market. So it's still in beta right now. So there are a few little quirks with it. Michelle and I have had a play with it, and you know, there's a few little things that can be frustrating with it, but I think it's good for them to launch it so we can actually try it and play around with it. So as a result of having full site editing with the header and the footer in there, we've now got a new block called the navigation block. And that enables you to put a navigation element on your page. That can either be a text navigation, so you can, you know, like your home, contact us, about us in a horizontal line. You can stack them vertically if you want, but it also has a mobile version as well. And you can choose whether you want that to collapse on mobile. So in the footer, you might just want to have text links, and you can just leave it as text links. In the header, you may want to have text links and then a collapsible navigation, I call it a burger, in the top right-hand side of the page. They've introduced better block controls. They've put a lot of improvements in terms of what you can actually control in a block. One of the things that they've done, which is quite nice, and you may or may not notice this, but the blocks now can actually have style sheets queued up specifically for individual blocks, and you can have several different style sheets for a block as well. The reason they've done that is for performance mainly. So if you've got a block with, say, 3 or 4 features in it, you can have a style sheet maybe just for the core of the block, and then if you introduce or check different features in that block, you can actually introduce additional style sheets as well. So it's the idea is to only enqueue stuff that your blocks need, and that will in turn improve performance. They've introduced block level locking as well, which is pretty cool. So if you are building a theme maybe for a client, or you've got somebody you don't want them to play around with a block and start adjusting it, and then that would result in you getting a phone call to get it fixed. You can now lock the block, and prevent them from editing that. They've also improved the gallery block as well. So if you've ever used the gallery block in the layout editor, they have improved that. One thing to bear in mind with that's one of the break-in changes in WordPress 5.9. So if you're using the gallery block, just bear that in mind. If you're upgrading to 5.9, I definitely recommend putting it onto a test site first of all, before actually rolling that out. We use the WordPress beta tester. I'll put the link for that in the chat so that you can download it. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but it's basically a plugin that you can install which will download nightly builds, release candidates, so that you don't have to worry about downloading it off the WordPress website. It actually sits within WordPress. You don't want to put that on a production website, but if you've got a staging or a development site, you can install that plugin and then download the nightly build or whichever version you want. You can test the next version. So they've already started work on WordPress 6. As you know, the WordPress version numbers go 5.8, 5.9, 6, 6.1. There's never a 5.10. It just goes up to 6 after 5.9. So
what was the name? I'm sorry, what was the name of the plugin?
It's called WordPress Beta Tester, and I put the link in the chat for you. And you install it, and then I believe it's in settings or tools, I forget where it is, where you configure it, probably settings, and you can choose what version of WordPress you would like it to look for updates for. And then when you go up to the update page, it'll say, hey, there's a new release like 6.0, maybe release candidate 1 or whatever, when we get to that point, and then you can then install that over 5.9 to test it. Again, don't put that on a production site, but put that on a staging site. But it's a really useful tool. And then you can flip back to the current live stable version when you've finished with it, and it's completely seamless. So you just click to install it and off it goes. There was a question about performance in 5.9. I'm not aware of any performance issues with 5.9 that I've come across when I've been using it. If anything, I'm finding the layout editor to be super quick. There are some minimum requirements in terms of PHP, so you need to be running at least PHP 7.4 is recommended. It will run on 7.2, 7.3, but 7.4 is now recommended. They're not quite there with PHP 8, I don't think. I would personally steer clear of PHP 8 at the moment, only because core's not quite there. There are a few things that they've already listed as having issues, but obviously there's thousands of plugins out there that aren't quite tested with PHP 8 yet. So I would stick to 7.4 wherever possible. MySQL, they're recommending 5.7. If you're using MariaDB, then it's 10.2 is the recommended version for that. So yeah, so I would for now I would stick to PHP 7.4 if you're looking to upgrade to 5.9. Other than that, I've not come across any other issues with it. I'm running it on quite a few of my client websites, and it's been pretty good. I think full site editing is still in its infancy. It's still in beta, so there's a fair way to go with it. But I'm quite excited about it because I think that I love the speed of it compared to other site builders like Elementor and Divi. I find it's very, very quick. But there's no reason why you can't continue to use the current site builders that you're using. So full site editing is not the be all and end all of WordPress. So you can definitely mix and match and use whatever you want, which I think is one of the nice things about WordPress. We're not stuck like Wix with one interface. We can choose other builders if we want, and if we inherit it from a client, we can carry on using it. So, and that's really the summary of where 5.9 is. So it's really a non-breaking upgrade, I think, apart from that gallery block. Other than that, I've not had any issues with it at all.
So you're saying, yeah. So you're saying that WordPress 5.9. If someone comes to you with a Wix site, you can import that into the 5.9 and
No, you can't import Wix into WordPress 5.9. That would be a completely different platform.
Okay, but Divi?
Yeah, I mean, Divi will work. So the way Divi works is Divi is like a theme plugin combo, and you would just use that in isolation of full site editing. So it would just take over. So when you've got Divi installed, or you've got Elementor or Oxygen or Bricks installed, when you go to a page editor, you're still going to see the button to edit the site using Divi or edit the site using Beaver Builder. So all that functionality is exactly the same. Full site editing themes are specifically built for the block editor in WordPress, and they are configured such that you can edit the header and footer. So those themes are completely different from Divi. So you can continue to use Divi just as you are now. There's no need to worry about that disappearing with full site editing.
Oh, okay.
And the same is true for Cadence or Elementor, any of those page builders.
Yeah, yeah, and all of the old themes that don't have full site editing with a header and footer, those still work as well. So it's only if the theme, and there aren't many of them around. You know, there is a full site editing theme library on WordPress.org, and that's growing. And Matt wants us to put thousands of themes in there, which will happen over time.
Yeah.
But it's growing. It's a very, very new part of WordPress, but they haven't done anything to prevent you using what you're currently using. So existing block-based themes will work, and as will all the other site builders as well.
Speaking of contributing and building and all of that, there's also another thing that came out of the I'm struggling with words. What did we go to in
State of the word?
Thank you, state of the word. Which is this photo gallery that they're building in WordPress. And there are 1,162 images that have already been contributed to that. I think the first 28 were mine because they asked me to pepper it to prime the pump with some of my photography, which was a nice, quick, easy upload because I didn't have to do them one at a time.
I'm jealous.
Yeah, there's 10 pending and 60 rejected at this point. So I'm one of the moderators for that. So if you are a photographer and you would like to contribute photos, be aware that it does make them open source, so other people will be free to use them, so you won't make money off of them. But it is one way to help create images that are, participate with images for other people to use. And my guess is that at some point this will somehow be connected to WordPress anyway, maybe with 6.0, so that you could just, reference that directory of photos from within WordPress. But I haven't heard anything about that directly. I don't know if Mark or Peter know anything about that, but it is nice to be able to see there, and you can go ahead. When I look here, one of Mark's photos is one of the most recent ones pending right now, so I'll get right on that for you.
And they also didn't they take over that open source photo?
Yeah, so they also have
directory as well.
Yeah, so it's not Pexels, it's the other one, Unsplash. So Unsplash, I think, is part of Automatic now, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
It was the Creative Commons library that was out there.
Yeah. So that's a huge library already.
Yeah, and there was definitely talk about incorporating that through, whether it starts off with a plugin or eventually into core, but being able to talk to that. So which would be really nice if it brings over attributes properly without much work, because then everybody gets credited well with no effort.
Yep, exactly.
And it's the photos that you submit to their photo gallery right now are all getting resized and everything ready for that. So I think we could well see a tab for open source images at some point you can click on and choose, which I think will be really cool. So it's obviously, if you compare that to like Shutterstock and things like that, they've got an immense amount of photography in there. So it's going to take some categorization, but it's a great start for sure. There's some awesome photos on there. People have submitted some great stuff.
There really are some really great photographers in the WordPress community. One of the other things that they're building, and not only like themes and full site editing themes, but blocks and block patterns and all of those things. So if you are developing any of those things and want to contribute them to the open source project, you're more than welcome to do that as well.
It's awesome.
Other questions about 5.9?
Yeah.
Sure.
So the fact that you said, this is Trevor. So you said that a lot of the things are still, you have to activate it for it to happen. So I heard all the news and then was not quite horrified to find out that my sites had updated automatically.
Right.
And I couldn't have told you that unless I went to the updates page. So,
Right.
so I'm good, right? I'm not missing anything that I didn't turn on.
There shouldn't be any other third-party plugins or anything that you need to install. If it's done the 5.9 upgrade, then that's it. There's no separate patches for that.
Okay.
So yeah, if it's done the upgrade, the auto upgrade, that'll either happen at a WordPress level or sometimes some hosting providers do it.
My hosting did.
I host a lot of stuff with Liquid Web and Nexus, and they've actually held back on that 5.9 upgrade for a little bit. I guess they just want to make sure everything's working okay, which makes sense, you know. Other sites I've got some pretty basic sites that some customers have that are just brochureware, and I upgraded those and it worked perfectly fine. The bigger ones I'm a little bit more cautious about, you know, like my own WS Form site, because I've got e-commerce on there and all kinds of stuff going on. So that's going to need a little bit of testing on a separate server. But yeah, essentially the 5.9 zip file that gets installed on your server is it.
Okay.
Yeah. And really that full site editing should not interfere with anything that you've got on there currently.
I think Peter, I think it was pretty important to, like, sure, with our group we did and all that while there was so much talk about full site editing, the whole point was to not do the way Gutenberg turned into the block editor, which was, it just appeared, but that you opt into it. Okay. So for most people, they're not going to see anything with 5.9 other than, honestly, a very improved editor experience. So it's only good for most people. There's been some issues out there, but for the most part, I mean, and that happens anytime. As far as that whole thing, now I'm a full site edit, no, you have to, unless you're specifically getting that theme or you're turning it on through a process, you're good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good to know.
You know, before you update, always have a good backup, something you can roll. And there's also, if you're looking at your plugins, for example, I just put one in there. It's a free plugin in the repository called WP Rollback. That's from the people at Give WP. So that's a nice one. If you're updating your plugins and you need to roll one back without reinstalling the entire site again, you can use that plugin to do that. So I just want to
one of the other changes I noticed, and this may or may not affect people, but I'll let you know about it anyway. They did upgrade the jQuery libraries in the latest version of WordPress. So actually found that one of those upgrades broke a feature in WS Form. I think they've shipped with 1.13.0 of the jQuery sortable library and a bunch of other libraries as well. But that one just had a known bug in it. So we actually ship our plugin with 1.13.1 and replace that on our edit page just to make sure that's working okay. That was really the only thing that we found that broke. Everything else was pretty good, which I'm impressed with. I mean, the number of people that contributed to that release was huge.
Yeah.
So they really did a good job, and they delayed the launch of it by a month, and I think it was the right decision to do that. So,
can I ask a newbie question?
Sure.
I forgot back when, but I got into a deep dive and got confused about whether or not you should start with a child theme or having to worry about the upgrades or not. So there were so many differences of opinions that I kind of gave up after a while.
So a child theme doesn't really have a lot to do with which version of WordPress you're using. It has to do with whether or not you have made changes to your theme, and you want to make changes to the theme that you don't want overwritten when your theme updates.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah. So a theme, when a theme updates, all the files for that theme will get overwritten with the new version. So the point of having a child theme is that part doesn't get upgraded, and then you can make any changes you want to that and then not have to worry about the theme overwriting itself when it upgrades. So if you used a child theme, that was definitely the right thing to do.
I want child plugins.
Yeah.
So actually,
Grandchild themes. Trevor.
niece or nephew themes.
Yeah.
So actually not quite a newbie question. So the latest site that I made, the Freaking Foul Mouthers, I accidentally didn't use a child theme on that.
Right.
Should I be able to just take my custom, my custom CSS, copy that out, put in a child theme and pop that in and should be okay? I mean, that's the major thing that I changed.
Yeah, typically the way that works, and it's actually part of WordPress core the way it works, but if you put, essentially a child theme is the same structure as the parent theme. And any files that you put in the child theme will take over the parent. So that's typically CSS files, maybe some images, whatever else you want to change. And then things like WooCommerce, for example, you can, in your theme, actually put a folder for WooCommerce and override their PHP if you even want to. And BBPress, for example, does that a lot. So if you want to customize how your forum looks or your posts look, then you just write a completely different PHP script, and WordPress will look for that child one first. If it can't find it, it'll load the parent. So any modifications that you've made in the theme that you've got right now, you should be able to copy those to a child, and it would then override what's in the parent. So the only time it may break is if the theme has some breaking changes in it, which is typically doesn't happen, but it can. You just want to make sure that your code is compatible with the actual parent. So again, running that on a staging server first would be a great idea.
But also, generally speaking, if the only changes you're making are CSS, you don't need a child theme. You can just use the I can't think of words again, the
Customizer.
theme customizer. Thank you, the customizer, because that's not going to get overwritten.
And I was going to say, Trevor, I have some experience doing that of exactly what you said. The one thing that is, if you're creating any custom post types in your functions file, and you want to use that child theme to do that, I would say the one thing, it's really easy to switch to a child theme. There's a plugin from Beaver Builder. It's the customizer import export. So you can export your customizer settings and then enable the child theme, and then you can import your customizer all the customizer settings that you did in the parent theme, and then you won't lose all of that, because that's a one big hurdle that I've had where I'm like, oh, I lost all my customizer settings. But you can export them as a file and then import them with that plugin. So if you want to move to a child theme after you've done a bunch of customizing.
Okay. And that plugin was through Beaver Builder.
It's
so if I
in the
search on
repo,
that,
just search for customizer exporter.
okay.
But I was going to say that the developer of it is Beaver Builder.
I see.
But it works with works with anything.
Thank you.
But that's the one piece that can be a little tricky. And that's what I found is if you use that, export your settings, and then you can move to a child theme pretty easily.
Okay.
Marianne, you have your hand up.
And that's what it was. So I'll put it down now.
Okay, I wasn't sure if you had a question.
We use the hand raising in meetings,
yes,
so that we can so we don't talk over each other. So
it's a great feature for sure. And Zoom.
I just blurt things out because my students do that to me all the time.
Yeah, that's it. Revenge.
There you go. Well, let's move into a demo of WS Form. I am in the biggest fibromyalgia fog ever on a humongous, I can't even think of the words, flare up. So that's why I'm struggling for words. So forgive me if I'm just like reaching for them, and feel free to fill them in for me. That won't bother me at all when I can't think of things. But Mark and I met I don't know. He's been one of the sponsors of WP Coffee Talk for over a year now. And so I offered to help him with some marketing in the fall leading up to Black Friday. And we started talking on a regular basis about marketing and other things. And I was like, well, I should probably try his plugin since he's, sponsoring me. And what I discovered when I started working with it absolutely blew away anything that I've used before. Now, in the past, we've had annual Battle of the Forms here when we had another person who was just like dead set on using Jotform. And I was like total Gravity Forms at the time. But I would toss aside Gravity Forms for a WS Form in a heartbeat. And if you are interested, absolutely, there is a free version, a light version, but I would absolutely go for the full shebang because it's got so many great features. So Mark, I'm going to let you go ahead and share your screen and show us all about WS Form.
Sure. Is it easier if I do a proper just share screen or?
Probably.
Yeah. You need to enable it so I can.
Oh, sorry, I thought that it was already enabled. Let me see.
And if anybody has any questions about this, well, I'll try and keep it brief. I could go on for days, but I'll just show you all the highlights.
I made you a co-host, so that should give you all the rights. Just don't kick me out.
Yeah, let me just. All right.
Yay.
How's that looking?
It's good.
All right, I'll zoom in a bit just so that we can see it a little bit easier. It might look a bit clunky because it's zoomed in, but okay. So the reason that people are like, why on earth did you build a form plugin? So the reason that I wrote WS Form, I started it about 4 years ago, was because I have an agency. We were finding building forms a little bit difficult, bit clunky. It was kind of like putting an alien on a web page and then having to style it. So we thought, oh, let's build a form plugin. And here we are 4 years later. We thought it would take about 3-4 months to build it, and it took us about 2 years to get it to where we were happy with it. But I'll run through and show you how WS Form works and how it's different from other form plugins. So first of all, we have about 100 plus different templates in WS Form. Everything from booking forms all the way through to, we have a bunch of demos in here that show you how to do certain things with the product. And then we integrate in with about 65 plus different third-party platforms as well. So if you've got one of those add-ons installed, we actually create templates for that installation. So if you're using maybe Mailchimp, Mailchimp will appear here, and you can then create a form for Mailchimp really easily, like one click. I'll show you that in a moment, but for now I'm just going to show you the basics around the plugin. So just to get started, we'll start with a Contact Us form. And the first thing you'll notice at the bottom of the page is we have this bar, which I can drag left and right. If I make this a little bit smaller, you can see this expanding and contracting. So, and what that is, that's our Breakpoint Selector. So we can actually preview the form in different device sizes, so everything from mobile all the way up to desktop. It's a fully responsive editor. So as I'm changing the width of fields on the form, and if I then go to a different breakpoint, and I can maybe do, let's say we do 2 columns on that one. I'm not going to make this super pretty, but you'll get the idea. And then maybe we go up to here. Maybe we'll do 3 columns. I'll just make that full for now. So what it will do, it'll actually remember all the column width for every breakpoint. So if I then preview this form, you can see now as I adjust the width of the page, it is now fully responsive. So a lot of form plugins will force you to use their breakpoints and collapse the form according to their rules. With WS Form, you can configure all that yourself and choose how you want it to look. So as you can see, you can resize fields, you can indent fields, you can also create sections. So this is actually a section here, and I can actually copy that section and put 2 sections side by side. If you want to introduce tabs to a form, you just click the Add Tab button at the top, and I can just add whatever fields I want to that. You can click on them, or you can actually drag and drop the fields as well if you want to. So you've got an option on how you want to do that. And what's happening is, as I edit this form, if I go to the preview, I'll bring this over here so you can see on the right-hand side. You'll see this updates in real time. So if I adjust the width of this, you'll see this is updating in real time on the right-hand side, which makes it super easy to work with your form and see what's going on with it. Every single form has its own, every field has its own settings. So if we go into a text field, for example, what we've done is taken pretty much the whole of the HTML5 spec and put all of the attributes in a setting so you can adjust them. So you've got everything from making a field required to making it hidden. You can put default values in there, placeholders, you can put helpful text underneath. And then we have some more advanced features such as autocomplete. So when the form loads, sometimes you might not want a field to complete automatically. That might be something like a password field that you don't want to be completed. So you can actually choose the autocomplete setting for that field. You can also choose the default keyboard that appears on a mobile device, for example. So for a date field, you may want to use a numeric keypad. If you're using a phone field, you would want the telephone virtual keyboard on there. So you can actually override that if you want and change the way that people interact. Which can be useful for accessibility. In terms of accessibility, the forms are all ARIA compliant. We have ARIA tags all the way through. We're actually working right now with an accessibility specialist as well to improve on some of our other fields, like rating fields can be a little bit tricky to use. Signature fields can be a little bit tricky to use, so we're working on improving those all the time. There's always new standards coming out for accessibility, so we're hot on that. I'm going to show you some of the other more advanced fields so you can see how those work. So let's have a look at a select drop down, for example. Now with a select drop down, let's put that over there so we can see it appearing here. So when you add a select field, by default, you're going to get option 1, 2, and 3 in there. So you can modify that. We actually have presets, so you can actually choose from presets off of our server. So let's just say, for example, countries. And we'll do get data, and that will pull down all the country data. And then I can say for the label in the select field, I want it to be the name. And then maybe for the value, I'll make that the alpha 3, which is the 3-character representation for that. And there's your select field loaded up. You can also drag and drop CSV files into that data grid if you want. So if you've got existing data that you want to load into a select field, you can just drag and drop that into this area here, and it will actually import it for you. You can also manually edit this. So if you want to make a particular country come up by default, let's go with Angola today. We can do that, hit save. It'll then set that as the default. You can do multi-selects as well. So if you want to have multiple rows appearing, you can do that. And then people could do multi-select on that. It's entirely up to you. And there are other data source settings as well. So you can actually pull data in from posts. So if you've got a custom post type of items that you want to load into that select, you can do that. Post statuses, terms, users. And then we've also got WordPress filter hook, which enables you, if you want to write some PHP code to load data into that select dropdown, you can do that as well. So there's all kinds of different options with the option selects on there. The other thing you can do, which is quite cool, you can do what's called auto op grouping. You may have seen in selects where they kind of have subheadings within that select and then items within that. And what you can do is click on settings here, and I can say, right, I want to auto op group that by region. And what it'll do is then create tabs up here for those regions. And if I hit save, you'll see now my select country is now split up by region. So that's a quick look at some of the features within a field. Every single one of these fields has its own customization features that you can go into. It gets pretty deep. It can be a little overwhelming when you first use it. There's a lot more that this does compared to other form plugins. But when you're building quite a complex form, then it can be quite helpful. So let me show you some conditional logic now and show you how that works. So the way that our conditional logic work is it's form-centric as opposed to field-centric. And what I mean by that is in other form plugins, when you click on a field, it may say, show this field when something else is happening. So it may be, show this field if someone has clicked this box. And that's it. So you can switch that field on and off. Our conditional logic goes a little bit more in depth than that. So I'm going to open up the conditional logic window here. I'm going to create a new condition. And let's just create something. So if we put a certain something in this first name field, that it's going to show this second section here. And it's pretty easy to do. So I can say if first name equals, and I'll just put my name in there for now. Then we'll choose that second section. And we'll just say set visibility visible. If not, it's hidden. And that's how easy it is to do conditional logic. So now when I type in Mark, it'll show, get rid of Mark, and it'll hide. So there's a lot of different conditions that you can do with this, not just typing in a name and matching it. If you look here, I don't think, can you see that drop down okay? Because sometimes Zoom has a bit of trouble with it. Okay. So you've got everything from contains, does not contain, all the usual stuff you'd expect, but we can also do it based on character count, word count. You can do regex expressions if you're familiar with those. You can also do events as well. So you can even do stuff like if a mouse or somebody touches a particular field, then do something. The stuff that you can do is pretty extensive as well. So as well as just switching a section on and off or a field on and off, you can do stuff like send an email, push some data to Salesforce, run some custom PHP code, run JavaScript, and that can all be done based upon any of these if conditions here. So one of the things that some people use it for, and you've got to be obviously careful with privacy and stuff, but if you want to do abandoned form stuff where someone types in their email address but doesn't actually submit the form, but you want to store the email address, that can all be done with conditional logic as well. So you can do form abandonment stuff. A more fun example of that, I'm just going to quickly show you on our WooCommerce site. So we're actually integrated in with WooCommerce, which means you can put any of our forms on a WooCommerce product and customize a WooCommerce product using the product. So if I click on a WooCommerce t-shirt here, this is all WS form. So I'm actually using this to modify this product here. So as I click on these radios, it's changing the color of that t-shirt. And if you click on custom here, you'll see that the word commerce changes from black to white based upon the lightness of that field. And again, that's done with conditional logic. So on the color field, we have options for what's the hue, what's the lightness. So there's a bunch of different options in there. And then we have actions. So typically with a form plugin, you can send an email notification to somebody, or maybe 2 email notifications. With ours, you can have any number of actions that run when a form is saved or submitted. You can also run actions with conditional logic as well. So you could say if these conditions are met, run this action, send some data out to wherever you want, or send an email or show a message. So to create an action is very simple. You just click here on the add button, choose the action that you want. So if I wanted to run some conversion tracking, for example, maybe I'm using a Facebook ad or something, I can actually fire a Facebook conversion tracking tag here just by adding an action to the form. So integration in with conversion tracking is super easy. There's a bunch of other actions here, and depending on what add-ons you've got installed with WS Form, will determine what actions you have available here. You can run JavaScript, you can run WordPress hooks, send emails to people. The email functionality is pretty complex, so there's a lot you can do with it. But you can just send a basic email to somebody from and to. But we also support round robin, for example. So if you have, maybe you've got a client that has 3 salespeople and they want to have 25% of the inquiries going to one person, 50 to another, 25% to another person. You can do that with round robin in here. You just choose round robin, choose the percentage of people that you want to, maybe submit that person, that you want it to be sent to, and then you can configure that all within here. You can customize your email content. You can choose what editor you want. You can actually do a full HTML email if you want. So if you want to send a completely custom email, you can do that, or you can just use our built-in template to keep it simple. And then if you want to get even more complicated, you can put email headers in there as well. That can be useful if you're using an SMTP plugin and you want to put some tracking information in there. So we do enable that with that particular feature. You can download forms, you can upload forms. So if you want to back up a form and move it to another site, you can do that. And then in addition to that, we've also got a section library. And the section library lets you drag and drop whole chunks of a form onto a form. So it makes building forms pretty easy. So you can drag, like a billing and shipping address onto the form. You can drag GDPR stuff and build forms that way. If you've built a section that you like and you want to reuse that on another site, you can actually add that to the section library and then reuse that somewhere else. You can also download these sections and then move them to a different site if you want to, and import those on a different site. Some of the other features that we've got are stuff like Google address fields. Let me just show you how that works. Let's go to a demo and let's go to Google address. Hopefully I've got the key on this one. I may not. To see if I've done it properly. No, I haven't. Let me just try this on a different server for you. I'm pretty sure this one's got a key on it. And let's go to demos and we'll go to Google address. Let's see if this one works. Preview that. There we go, that's a bit better. So we have integration in with a lot of different third-party platforms, Google being one of them. So this is just an example of where I can part type in an address. It fills out the rest of the address for you based upon the one that you've chosen. You can even show that on a map as well, so they can confirm where that is. You can put that on as many different fields as you want. So if you had a separate billing and a separate shipping address, then you can put that Google address field on both of those. Some other useful fields that we've got for, particularly for spam, reducing spam, we support reCAPTCHA. We also support HCAPTCHA as well. And HCAPTCHA is a good alternative if you're privacy conscious. They claim to take less information than Google do when you're clicking on that reCAPTCHA. I tend to find the Google reCAPTCHA is a little bit easier for the user to use. It doesn't ask so many questions, but the HCAPTCHA is equally as effective and is good if you're privacy conscious for sure. You've also got basic e-commerce in WS Form as well. So if you want to create maybe a donation form or something like that, you can do that. I'll quickly show you some of the e-commerce functionalities. Let's go to this one here. So the e-commerce, we have like basic price fields. So people can type in a price, or you can set a price. You can choose a price from a select drop down. You can do checkboxes, radios. You can even do price range selectors as well. It'll handle basic shipping, basic tax, and then we're integrated in with Stripe, PayPal, Authorize.net, so you can take credit cards online if you want to. Or you can actually take this e-commerce form and put it on a WooCommerce product, and the price that is added up here then becomes the product price that you add to the cart in WooCommerce. You can actually customize pricing. So if we were to look at this demo again here, you can do everything from a basic donation form on there, and I can just put whatever amount I want on there, click add to cart, or I can do things a little bit more complicated. Let's have a see what I've got on here. Price variations, repeatable sections. Oh, here we go, calculations. Yeah, so this is an example of using those e-commerce fields on a product itself. And I can actually do checkbox, radio, select drop downs. And then this amount here will then become the price of the product in the cart. So you can fully customize products using this. And you can put all of the different field types that we have into a WooCommerce product as well. So even things like file uploads, you can drag and drop files in. You can even put the Google map I showed you earlier onto a product. Maybe if you're selling maps or something, you can get people to choose what area they want. So there's an awful lot that you can do with that. It also supports repeaters, like repeatable sections. So if you want to build a form that has, maybe you have to type in attendee names or people that were going to be on a booking, you can actually do repeaters. And our repeaters work with Conditional Logic. They work with all of our calculated fields and everything else. So other form plugins with repeaters can be a little bit cumbersome. You've got to write some code for it to get it working. So you probably notice everything I've showed you has all been drag and drop. So we're very hot on no code and trying to give you as much functionality as possible without having to do all the coding. That's not to say you can't do the coding, because you can. If you want to do some fun stuff with preloading a form or working with the data yourself, then you can do that. But the idea has been to give you as much control as possible without having to do any of that coding. So and then we've got the submission area. So when somebody actually submits a form, you can download the submissions. You can do a full CSV download of all those submissions if you want. You can edit the submissions from within there. So that's actually all included in our Lite product as well. So if you're using the Lite product to do a Contact Us form, some plugins require you to upgrade to actually access your submissions, which I think is crazy. But with WS Form, that's included. So you can do exports, you can view all your submissions. That's all
I've
included.
never seen it be so easy to download a CSV as it is with WS Form. Like literally, you just pull up your submissions for whatever form and click the button, and there it is.
Yeah, super easy.
Mm-hmm.
And then all the forms have full undo on them as well. So if I were to create a Contact Us form, make a few changes to it, resize it, whatever. You've actually got full undo as well, so you can go back to any step on that form and actually get back to a step before you've made that nasty mistake. We have support built into the plugin as well, so you can access our knowledge base, and you can also contact our support team within the plugin as well. And one of the cool things is you can actually send your form to us, and then we can have a look at what your form's doing and help diagnose any issues that you might be having with it. You can also send us a system report if you want. That will just let us look and make sure you're running the right versions of PHP and everything, just to see if there's any issues or if there's another plugin interfering somewhere. So that's the support feature in there as well. We have a bunch of other spam features in here. So you can actually introduce what's called human presence, which it's an artificial intelligence system that somehow works out whether you're a human or not. And that's integrated in with WS Form. We're integrated with Akismet, so that's actually looking at content people type in and looking for the word Viagra to make sure that's not in there, and will then prevent emails coming through. And then we've got the basic Honeypot as well. I don't know if people are familiar with Honeypot, but essentially what that does is it puts a hidden field on the form. And if the form comes through and there's some data in that field, then we reject the submission, because that's probably a hacker trying to just spam the form. I would be careful with that, because some browsers will try and auto-complete that field, and that can cause the Honeypot to fail. So we actually switch that off by default. There are some better methods that you can use. I tend to use reCAPTCHA the most for spam prevention. I find that works the best. Just very quickly, some other things that we have tracking on there. So tracking is switched off by default for privacy reasons, but if your privacy policy allows you to capture things like remote IP address, you can do that. We actually have IP tracking and IP geo lookup as well. So if you enable that, you can see what city, state, country people are coming from on your form. We have Google Analytics tracking in here as well, so you can switch that on and it will automatically send data to Google Analytics on your behalf to help you analyze how your form is being used. And then we've also got limits as well. So the limits enable you can actually do limits on a form, section, tab, or a field level. So you can actually say, only show this section if somebody's logged in, or only show this section if somebody has this particular role capability. So that's all built into the product as well. So we do have conversational forms as well. I don't know if people are familiar with those. I'll quickly show you that. Let's just go to survey, conversational, and I'll publish that form, and then we'll preview that. And I'm just let me just hide that debug console. Let me just quickly show you this debug console, so I think you'll find that interesting. So if I go to Contact Us, I'll create Contact Us form, hit preview. You'll notice this debug bar down at the bottom of the page. Make it a bit bigger so you can see it. This is a debug console that we've developed for WS Form, and it enables you to rapidly test your form. So if you've got a customer who has 30, 40 fields on a form, a really big form, that can be really annoying to have to fill that form out multiple times to test the email. So what we have is a populate button down here, which auto-populates the form for you. And every time you click on it, it fills the form out with different information. And there's also a populate and submit button. So in one click, you can fill the form out, submit it, and test it. So I can click that, multiple times. And if I go into submissions now, I can then see those submissions coming through. So that's how quick it is to actually test forms in WS Form. That's really, really useful for very, very complex forms. So just going back to that conversational form quickly, let me just switch off that debug console we were just looking at, make this a bit easier to look at. So conversational forms is essentially taking a regular form and making it a nice multi-step process, a bit like Typeform you may have seen. And if I click on start, you'll see it then jumps down the page as I'm going through these fields. You can actually make this so that you have one question per page if you want. You don't have to have it scrolling like that, but you can actually do just one question per page, style that how you want. And it just makes it a lot easier for a user to digest that form and work their way through it. And again, this supports all the different field types. You can do conditional logic with it, switch things on and off, and it will auto adjust as the user's going through that form. So I think that's basically it. There's a lot more that it does, which, if anybody has any questions, I'll be happy to answer. But that kind of gives you a rough overview of how WS Form works.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've been enjoying playing with it, and I haven't even scratched the surface of everything it can do.
Yeah.
Peter, you want a question?
Also speaking up, because I got a lot.
Okay, go for it.
I'll let Rin talk.
Okay.
What's the difference between the light version and the pro version?
So the light version has less fields built into it. It gives you pretty much everything you need for a basic contact us form, but you still got things like select boxes, check boxes, and things like that. It doesn't include the conditional logic. So the conditional logic is part of the pro edition. And I'm trying to think what else we exclude from it. I mean, most of the core functions on the fields are all there on the fields that we include. So it's mainly additional fields in the pro version, the conditional logic, and then also the ability to use our add-ons as well. So I'll quickly show you how it works with the add-ons. Let me just see if I've got the Mailchimp one installed on here. Yeah, there we go. Hopefully I've got this connected. I may not. Let's go to... Okay. Let me just see if I can connect this quickly.
While you're doing that, the other question is it a single site license or is it multi-site license for the pro?
We have different options for that. So we have a personal license, which is for one user, so one site. We have a freelance version, which is 5 sites, and we have an agency edition, which is unlimited sites. And each level includes different add-ons. So I can show you on the site itself. If you go to our pricing page. So the personal includes all the templates, all the different field types, conditional logic, so all the core functionalities there. The freelance is for 5 sites, but we include these add-ons with it. And then the agency is basically all those and then all these as well. So you get pretty much every add-on apart from the WooCommerce one. The WooCommerce extension we actually sell exclusively through WooCommerce because it's part of the WooCommerce. They have a completely different licensing mechanism to regular plugins, so that's why it's part of the WooCommerce site. Let me just see if I've got. Now I'm on my slower server. Let's see if I've got Mailchimp on here. I just wanted to show you the auto adding of forms. So one thing I will quickly show you is the Acf integration that we have. So if you're using Acf for custom fields, we're actually integrated in with Acf, Pods, Toolset, and Metabox as well. So if you're using any of those to create custom fields, it's fully integrated with that. So if I go to post management on this server, you'll notice that Acf appears on this post custom post type. And that's because it's detected that you've got some custom fields for Acf. And if I then use that template, what it'll actually do is build a form for that post type, but it includes all the custom fields that you've configured in Acf. So it just builds the whole form for you. If I preview that, you can see all the different fields for Acf that are on the form. But the great thing about this is you can then modify that in any way that you want. You're not fixed with the regular ACF field format, the regular ACF forms. And everything is mapped ready for you. So if I go to Actions and I go to Post Management, let's open this up a little bit, you'll see that it's actually auto-mapped all of the fields for you. So when I submit this, it's going to create a post in WordPress with all these fields automatically mapped and ready to go for you. You can also use this to populate data from a post into the form and then make it so that you can update a post using this system as well. So you can do add posts and update posts. It's all bi-directional, and that works with ACF, Pods, Toolset, and Metabox as well. Let me see if this will work with my Mailchimp. I keep wanting to show you now. All right, so here's Mailchimp. So I've connected WS Form to Mailchimp. And if I hit refresh here, it'll actually, what it's doing is it's putting down all the lists that I have in Mailchimp. So I've got, say, for example, a newsletter sign up list. If I then hit use template, it's going to build a form for that list. So it's looking at all the Mailchimp custom fields that you might have. It's looking at any tags in the interest groups that you've got configured in Mailchimp and building a form for you. And that form is ready to go. So I can put that form on my site. I can remove any fields I want. It doesn't have to look like that. It's just putting everything in that you've configured. And then when I hit submit, that's going to push a contact through to Mailchimp. You can also, again, populate the form from Mailchimp. So if somebody is signed into your website, we send their email address off to Mailchimp. We can pull their record down and we can show it on this form. So you can do like an edit profile page for your Mailchimp subscribers. And pretty much every add-on that we have works that way. They're all bi-directional. They all have single-click templates on them to make it super easy to build these forms. All right. Any other questions?
I was happy to hear. So Toolset is part of it. So I'm interested in with integrations, right? That, I mean, that just makes this sort of like one of the linchpins in pulling so many things together. So Woocommerce is a separate license. Toolset, which I use. That, I mean, with those tools, I'm trying to think of anything else that, you know, looking at that list, and anything coming up that we're not seeing yet, because it's a great list to be. And with Zapier in itself, you can do a heck of a lot.
Yeah, and we also have a push to custom endpoint action as well. So if you've got a particular API that you want to talk to, as long as it's not too complicated, because some of them, you know, it's not really easy to write a custom thing for it. But we do have a push to custom endpoint action. We have a run WordPress hook action. So if you want to write some custom code to take the form data and do with it, you know, whatever you want to do with it, you've got that as well. Like you said, Zapier, that enables you to plug into pretty much thousands of different third-party platforms. Our Zapier add-on is free as well. So if you just have the WS Form Pro edition, the personal edition, the Zapier add-on is free to use. And we've got some newer stuff like Notion has just come out, so we've integrated in with that pretty quickly. There's still some other ones that we want to do. I mean, there's a lot of people around the world that use different platforms, so we're continually adding to this list, but we've covered all the basic ones initially. We have a lot more add-ons than some of the other plugins that are out there already, but and then we have integration as well with like Dropbox, Google Drive. So if you're uploading images, you can actually upload those to like Amazon S3 and store them there if you want to. And then in terms of we already went through the custom field plugins that we've got. Again, those are all bi-directional integrations. We are compatible with all the core fields on all of those custom field plugins. So all the different field types that you have. When you create a form from those custom field plugins, it will create an equivalent field on the form. In fact, when we were working with Elliot Condon with ACF, when he did own it, he's since sold out. He's probably sitting on a beach somewhere happy. But we actually added some fields to support some of the field types he had, just to make sure that we were fully compatible with everything that he could do. And our repeaters work with ACF repeaters as well. So if you've got a repeater in ACF, you can actually use that with WS Form, and they're fully integrated as well.
Can I throw a case at you and see?
Yeah.
Okay, so I've got a client. They're an association. The members of the association have a number of employees that they might want to sign up for a course, a class. They don't want to put in a full LMS at this point, learning management system. But the idea of being able to give the person who is buying, who's doing the paying, to be able to go in and say, I want to add these 5 people and put in their names and their contact information. Sounds like you described something when you're talking about WooCommerce. Now, would you do the WooCommerce or really any payment gateway, or would you recommend WooCommerce because of everything that you can track?
Yeah, I mean, so our e-commerce is fine if you just want to do a basic transaction. You know, there's no like order tracking or anything off the back end of it, whereas you would get that with WooCommerce. So if you want to do it in WooCommerce, this is an example of a repeatable section. So this could very easily be someone's name. And then you can just click add to add people to it. And then when they click add to cart, that will then show all the people that have registered. So you can do it there. If you want to do a repeater in WS Form, it is very, very easily. So I can just, you know, put a couple of fields in here. I could do first name. I'm not going to be able to type now that I'm on camera. And then if you want to turn that section into a repeatable section, you just click on section settings, make it repeatable. You can actually choose the default row count if you want. So if you want it to appear with 3 initially or 2 initially, you can do that. You can also limit the number of rows as well. So if you want to limit to say 5 people, you could do that. And then if I hit save and close, you'll see it automatically adds some icons to that section. You can change that to use any of the other repeatable section buttons that we have. If I preview that, you can see that's it working. And then from there, you can then add a Stripe button and credit card entry, or you could put a PayPal button on there, whatever you want to do. And then to determine the price, you could do that as like a price per person or whatever you want to do. We have calculated fields in WS Form, and I'll show you that quickly. So let's do calculated fields. So you can do basic arithmetic. We have a bunch of math variables in here. This is it actually working with repeatable sections. So you can see that the calculation is taking values and moving it to elsewhere on the form with repeaters. You can actually take the number of repeatable rows that there are and then multiply that by a price if you want to. So the possibilities are fairly endless with it.
Yeah, no, I love the idea of that what you've been showing. And when I first saw you or heard you talking about this with Nathan on WP Builds, and all, and I was really intrigued. Being a Gravity Forms user, being a Fluent Forms license owner, I'm like, you're covering much more, and your interface, I can tell that this was built by somebody who has had to do a lot of forms, even including the populate field itself is its own. I don't even know if the other guys have it. I don't know, but
no, they don't.
That's genius. That's worth the price right there. The amount of time, like you said.
That was the first thing we built, was the populate feature, because we have tested easily 5,000 plus forms with this plugin. So that populate feature has been really, really useful. And one of the things that we made sure with that as well was, if you're testing maybe a password change form, that both the passwords are the same when you populate it. If you're doing phone number fields, we keep the area codes all the same to keep it consistent. So if you're pushing data through to maybe Mailchimp or a third party, we try and get the data as close as we can. You know, there are some add-ons that are very pernickety about formats, and there's just no way we can get around it for 2 different types of add-on. But on the whole, it saves so much time, and that works with multi-tab forms as well. So if you've got a form split over, say, 10 tabs, it'll populate all of those tabs. It'll even populate signature fields as well.
So compared to, say, SurveyMonkey or survey software, it feels like you've got, am I correct in thinking that you can basically do everything through WS Forms for the most part?
Yeah, for the most part. One of the things that we are working on right now is a whole view system as well, so that you can produce nice looking stats, like pie charts, bar graphs, and stuff like that. That's our kind of next natural progression with the product. A lot of other form plugins depend on a third party to have that, so like Gravity View and stuff like that. So we're going to be building that into the product itself, but we're hoping, well, it will be fully integrated in with the block editor as well. So you'll actually be able to drag and drop like a pie chart onto a page and then say, show me the data for this form in this field. And then you can produce your own nice views in the block editor itself.
So the list of features that make you unique is a few anyway, right? I mean, it's
there's I mean, pretty much everything that we've built, we've really thought it through and made sure that it's thorough, that you know you can actually edit all of that within the user interface and not have to worry about writing some additional code to make it happen. You know, we've also got quite a few little performance things in WS Form as well. For example, you can like pre-compile the CSS to make it run faster. All of the Jquery libraries, if we do use any libraries, for example, for like signature, date pickers and stuff like that, you have the option of loading those from a CDN or loading them locally from the server itself. So you've got the option there. We only load stuff if that field appears on the page itself. So there's a lot of stuff that we do behind the scenes just to try and get it as efficient as possible. I was going to quickly show you the this form here is basically every field type that we have all on one big page. So if I hit populate on that, you'll see everything on that form populating. Even signature fields get completed as well.
That's worth it right there. That's great.
Yeah.
It's a really great tool.
Saves you a lot of time.
Yeah, and you know the thing that, you know, for other people on the call and all, and is to think about these tools. We're so, you know, we think often in terms of a contact form, but this kind of form plugin can be used for a lot more than that. In fact, you know, I've got on a site, you know, something where it's a simple calculator, but it's like, hey, use your, you know, with the calculated fields and all. It doesn't, you know, we keep track of what people are actually asking, but we're not, it's not a contact form or something like that. It's just a great way of interacting and making your site interactive.
Yeah. We've had a lot of people say, you know, you're not a form builder, you're an app builder.
Yeah, that's what it feels like.
And you can build a lot of stuff with this. One of the other things I forgot to mention as well is if you're using a theme that happens to be built in Bootstrap or Foundation, WS Form outputs native HTML for those frameworks. So if you've already got a form built in that, it'll style itself out of the box. And then we have a fallback on WS Form. Is our own framework, so you can style that if you need to. And then we're also working, I don't know if anybody's familiar with the Oxygen site builder and the, what is it called? I can never remember the name of it, but it's Automatic CSS, which was developed by Kevin Geary. So if you're using that, we're about to support that as well.
Last question from me. You've been talking about a lot with integration with email. Back and forward. What about SMS?
We're about to do a Twilio add-on, so that's coming soon.
Is that in the Pro version, or would that be on the Lite?
That will be on the Pro version. It'll be an add-on for the Pro version.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, I've actually just been playing with their API. It's quite fun.
Well, it was great. Yeah.
Yeah, it really is good.
Yeah.
It's robust.
That's another example of where there's one side where it's very code heavy, but then you can go into the drag and drop the flow chart, and all of a sudden you go, well, that's what I want to do.
Yeah.
You know, like I look at the code and I you know,
yeah,
it becomes gibberish to me very quickly.
That's one thing I would love to do with our actions eventually, is actually make them like a program, so you can do flow diagrams with them, and maybe, you know, delay an email for 7 days. But then I'm getting into the whole realm of CRM and
but I'll tell you that was okay. I've got one more question. I don't want to monopolize the time, but that idea of saying, you know, if somebody is signing up for in this case, the same case study, a course, and they're adding a number of people, and the course is coming up, having the availability of that list of names and to be able to say, okay, the thing starts tomorrow and here's what you need to do. I'm sure I can figure out how to use this, and I'm just trying to think of if it's something that it's even more obvious, like, yeah, we thought about it and just go do this, or it's like, we'll go to your Google Sheets and then pull it up, or, you know, writing it out to a custom post type, or, you know, in the user thing. Because I was thinking, well, if I go into WooCommerce and write it as a customer, then I can see when they bought it and all, but I'm like, what's the simplest way to do that?
Yeah. You can, like with our date selector, you can switch dates on and off, but it's all done through the user interface right now. Technically, you could actually go in there and tweak it and disable dates programmatically if you wanted to. But our focus to date has just been on no code predominantly. So eventually I will be documenting all the hooks and filters and fun stuff like that, because we have built that, you know, with that in mind. We have a bunch of stuff in the, I'll show you the knowledge base quickly just so you can see it. But in our knowledge base, we have a tutorial section with a bunch of different tutorials on how to do certain things. And we've also got a PHP section in there with some examples on, you know, how to filter certain email addresses, how to populate default values on fields. All the basic stuff that you need is in there if you want to do stuff programmatically, and all the hooks are there. All right. Any other questions?
Any questions about anything in general?
Yeah.
I'll put it up at the end too, just in case people have questions about things.
Yeah.
I'd say thank you very much, Mark. It was a great presentation.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I appreciate you having me on. I always love to show the product, and hopefully you like what you saw.
Absolutely.
So, so I still, you know, being a newbie, like I said, I'm still a little confused as to which course of action to either stick with something simplistic like Divi, or to take the plunge. And it sounds like doing the, what do you call it? The WordPress.
The full site editing.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're familiar with Divi, I would stick with that right now. I really would. Full site editing is still in its infancy. You know, you're still, unless you're kind of custom coding the theme yourself, you can probably do more things with Divi currently. It's, you know, all these new bells and whistles are on their way with full site editing, and it's still in beta as well. So it's kind of there if you want to use it and play around with it, give it a go. But if you're familiar with Divi for the moment, Divi is going to be a site builder that's going to be around for a long time. There's no real need to jump ship and go to the block editor now if you're not ready for that.
Okay.
I agree.
If you're deciding between Divi and learning the WordPress core editor, the block editor, I would spend some time in that block editor. I really, it's gotten so much better. Got a bad rap the way they rolled it out at first, but now when I go to my other page builders, I'm like, it's harder for me now to use the page builder and figure out which box and
there's a huge, well, maybe not huge, but there's a large on-ramp to getting into Divi and figuring out everything it can do. It can do a lot of neat stuff, but the latest sites that I've built, I've just been using the block editor and a theme and going from there. And I've been happy. I haven't been able to, I haven't run into anything that I couldn't do that way that I want to do. There's a lot of things I know I could do in Divi, but I don't want to do those things. So we have a Divi module in WS Forms. So if you're using Divi, you can add forms to the Divi page real easily. And then we're hooked up with Block Editor, Bricks, Oxygen, Divi, Beaver Builder, Elementor as well. So we have modules for all of those.
I'm a big fan. Did you put the link to your purchase page in the chat, Mark?
I didn't, no.
If anybody's interested in checking it out later.
Yeah, I'll put the link to the site in there. So
A few people had to leave and they messaged me privately to say thank you.
Oh, no worries.
Marianne said she's a huge fan.
Great.
And
Right.
yeah,
One meetup at a time.
exactly.
Yeah, I was going to say, how do we keep building your user base so you get better and better and you can afford to spend the time and all this?
I mean, that's been the biggest challenge with
yeah.
WS Form. You know, I dropping myself into the plugin market was difficult enough. Dropping myself into the form area was a real challenge. Really, it's been through relationships like with Michelle. Been a fantastic advocate of the product, and I have a few other people that I do that with. And I tend to find that I'm going into another user group, like the Oxygen page builder was a really good one for us, because a lot of developers in there that are doing complex stuff. But even, you know, you can use the product for a very simple contact us form, or if you want to do a form with a drop down on it, you can do that too. So it's just a case of finding all those key areas. So we've had steady growth. It's been good, but it's been slow. It's a challenge. Yeah. And traditional marketing channels such as, you know, Google AdWords and things like that just don't work for us. When you're selling a product that's too cheap, in my opinion, it's $59 and you get all the support and updates for that. Trying to get a new customer with Google AdWords is just now impossible for us. So we find that the advocating with people and helping, I mean, really, I try and involve myself in as much WordPress as I possibly can afford to, in terms of my free time. So doing this, helping out with WordPress in general, and answering people's questions on Facebook, and just trying to get the name out there that way. It's just an ongoing process, really. So
sign them up for your meetup, Peter.
Yeah, no, I will do that. We get a good turnout, and I'll tell you, I'm looking at your. Oh, sorry for the noise, because that's your YouTube channel and all, because it's the demos of actual use cases that are the things that are the light bulb, you know, and yeah. And Mark, you do a great job of demonstrating the product and being able to move. It's really helpful, because you can see, you know, get those ideas and those sparks on how you can.
Great, yeah. I want to do. I really want to do some more video tutorials of me just talking people through it. Hence why, you know, I've invested in a green screen to try and make myself look a little bit more presentable than
Have you worked with Jamie Marsland? Do you know Jamie?
No. No.
He's been doing a really good job. Michelle, do you know Jamie Marsland, Poodle Press?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so he's been doing a really good job, I think, personally. I like the way he presents too, and he's got a niche plugin product, which block-based builder for WooCommerce, and a number of other things. So, and he spends a lot of time in not only showing how it works and use cases, but even doing other WordPress. He had one. His big video this last month or so was asking all these WordPress influencers, you know, kind of answers to questions, certain things, and what they can need to put all together. So he's been doing a lot in video. Hopefully it's working for him. I feel it must be, because he's continuing to invest the time.
Cool. But I'll check him out.
You should. Jamie Marsland. I think he does a great job.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good deal. Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. No, happy to help. I would love to see, you know, this is the type of thing too, when you find something that feels like, you know, you can invest the time in, because the problem that we don't want to get into is the shiny, you know, the new thing, and you know, oh my gosh, there's a new form thing, I got to get it because it's got the greatest and best. No, it's like, wait a minute, it solves the problems that I need and some of the things I can see going forward. Yeah. And then feeling like, you know, it's got a future too, which is always.
Yeah. And something I've spoken to Michelle about as well is that the WordPress community is so split up. There's all these little pockets of people that work together. and it's there's no like one big channel we can go to and say, hey, here's the product. And I think if the word comes from other people that are using it and we get that word of mouth recommendation, then that's the best marketing in the world, really. So, but we're very, very hot on customer service. If you look at our Lite product, we've got 85 5-star reviews on there. They're all legitimate, all heartfelt. Yeah. I asked them for every single one. There was a few that have just written stuff, but we're really, it touches you when you get a nice review from someone and it's helped them do something. You're like, yeah, that made the hard work worth it. So
absolutely.
Yeah, and accessibility, which was you're saying is, and accessibility in the forms world up until recently has been pretty abysmal. But there's been some great improvements by different products and all.
Yeah,
but that's another area to spend some time if you have.
100%. In fact, I'm working with a guy in Europe who is actually physically testing the product with people that are sight impaired or whatever, and they're feeling their way around the form and listening. And we've actually had to kind of hack the code in some places just to get the reader to sound better. So that it's kind of not repeating itself over and over again. It's interesting. It's and we use I don't know if people are familiar with A11Y, but that's a great resource for accessibility, not only for forms but for other stuff. And there's it's A11Y. Let me just get the website. There's actually two good websites for that. There's the main. Let me just see if I can get the main one, get the right one. So I'm sure every .com, .co, .org has been registered under that. I'll post
there is, A11 or Ali. Sometimes they pronounce it because it's the way it looks.
Yeah.
So, the 11 is the number of letters between the A and the Y in accessibility.
Yeah.
So,
A11Y. A11yproject.com.
Yeah.
There is another website as well that has some great code samples on it. I'll see if I can find it. But somebody's actually taken all the kind of page elements and then written examples of how best to implement those elements on a page, which is really useful.
The A11Y-101, that one?
It might be.
That's a nice clean site for if somebody needs to find something out right away.
Yeah.
I think we lost...
yeah, that's it. The 101 site. I'll put it in the chat as well.
Marianne would have had something to say about this. She's involved.
Her husband's car battery died, so she had to go.
Oh no!
Go jumpstart him. She was like, "Please tell him I said it's amazing." But I promise I will. And Trisha had to leave too. She said thank you. She's looking to look into WS Form also. So
great. Yeah, if they've got any questions, they can just send us an email and we'll jump on it.
Yeah, for sure. Any other questions about anything? If not, I have to go solve my father's email problem. Nobody else is tech support for their whole family, are they?
No.
I married my tech support.
There you go.
Well, I got a quick email tech support question I can ask you because it's something I have to deal with next. I have a client who has a Gmail account that she's paying somebody else to manage. Any guess as to how hard it's going to be for her to make sure that she gets ownership of her own Gmail account versus having them manage the payment? Or is it just going to be they have to be nice and do it? I haven't tried to do that.
I mean, Google, their business product, as long as they're an admin on it, they should be able to take over the payment. I don't think there's an umbrella account for Gmail accounts.
Okay.
Or Google business accounts. So
just go in, take over the payment and say, I own it. Got it.
I would have thought so, yeah.
I hope so.
Yeah, because it's not like, domain names or anything like that. It's should be separate.
Good. Thank you.
So let us know how it goes.
Yeah. We'll tune in next week.
Well, thanks everybody for coming. I'm gonna stop the recording. I can get my
thanks for all the information.